Bill,
Yeah.
who are you going to make the recording available to?
I'll send out the slides to everybody. The recording, not so.
Okay.
Everybody who's joined, we'll wait one more minute and then get started. You know, that will do it. Welcome, everybody. Broadcasting from Chicago, the Illinois SBDC International Trade Center at the Women's Business Development Center on Michigan Avenue, downtown Chicago. Welcome to our May webinar. Today, we're going to talk about international e-commerce. I have a few slides to go through. Thanks for those that have, for bearing with me, for people who've been on these webinars before. We'll cover this quickly and then get into the content. So a lot of you know about the Women's Business Development Center. It's been around since 1986. This is where the International Trade Center is hosted and located. It's a well-known, well-established nonprofit in Chicago with branches throughout the Midwest, founded in 1986. And the WBDC has programs and services that support women's business ownership and grow the ability to grow businesses. So within this WBDC, Women's Business Development Center, there's also an Illinois SBDC. There are programs you ought to check out if you're interested in developing your local business, your domestic business. There are resources and assets available to help you in terms of starting up your business and business plan analysis and funding options, et cetera. And also, if you're interested in sales to government, there's what's called a PTAC. There's a lot of programming around selling to governments, federal, county, city governments, and a lot of good coaching available there. So look at the WBDC.org website if you're interested. So I am the director of the International Trade Center, and we're an extension of the state of Illinois Office of Trade and Investment. So we've got clients both within the WBDC and outside in the city of Chicago. And at the ITC, I can help you assess your export readiness, build an export plan. And we've got a whole network of experts that can help you with topics such as strategy, shipping, logistics, getting paid, etc. So we're here as a resource for the community. I've been doing this. I've got 30 years of private sector export experience. I've lived all around the world. I've worked in 65 some countries. 65 is the one I lost count. I've worked in a lot of different industries, so I think that helps, from small to big businesses. And I've been involved in the international trade community in Chicago for a long time. So I'm glad to be here available to assist small businesses to grow. So today we're going to talk about e-commerce. If you want to sell via e-commerce internationally, you have choices at each step. So what are your options? What are the pros and cons at each decision point? This is what we'll talk about today. And I'm really pleased to have an expert. Kim Kirkendall of International Resource Development is an expert that I've heard when she's done webinars elsewhere, and was really impressed by the depth of knowledge and depth of experience she brings to the topic. So we're glad to have her at the ITC at the Women's Business Development Center today. Remember, today is part one of a two-part program. Kim will be back next week. Same time, same day, to talk about international e-commerce and social media. So, and anybody who's in on this, who registered for this, we'll send you the link to attend next week. Later, after Kim, we'll talk quickly about the State of Illinois Office of Trade and Investment capabilities, and we'll talk about the ISTEP grant program. That's free money. We'll let you know what the requirements are there. So we'll go about an hour. If you've got questions, go to the Q&A. Do not go into the chat. The Q&A I can capture later. So if we need to follow up, I can go back in and get that. And yeah, and follow up as needed if you want to connect with Kim or a particular question for me as we go on. So from there, I'm going to proceed. I'm going to hand over the screen to Kim. Kim, introduce yourself a bit and off we go. I see it. There we go. You're good. You're on mute.
Hello there.
Now I hear you. Okay.
I was trying to stay silent while Bill was talking. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to have you here with us this afternoon. And as Bill said, we're going to have a second half of this or another session on specifically on international social media marketing next week. So today we're going to talk about e-commerce for export. So I'll give you a brief introduction of myself. You can find a bio on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great way to get a hold of me. Kimberly Kirkendall on LinkedIn. So I started my international business career in China 35 years ago. I moved to China and lived there for 5 years. I speak Chinese. I studied international business. I ran factories for a US company in China for a couple of years and then was head of their Asia Pacific office in Hong Kong for 2 more years. So my first 5 years out of college was all in China. And then I came back, was on the West Coast, managing all the Asian manufacturing and supply chain for a company, spent my 20s in general in operations and manufacturing, moved back to the Midwest, which is where I grew up in my late 20s, early 30s, became a CPA, consulted for the CPA firm on some international and operations issues, and then over time started my own consulting business. So I've done a lot of work with companies that you would know: Disney, Lubrizol, Invacare, American Greetings, Swagelok, industrial companies, chemical companies, consumer product companies, setting up operations overseas, primarily China, but also in Greater Asia, had clients in Europe. So what we want to talk about today is the outbound side. We've done a lot of channel development and international marketing for different clients. We have a project right now on that. So we're going to loop in some export on this subject because it's important to understand export along with the e-commerce. So our topics for today, and I've got some extra slides in here that are not in what you'll be getting from Bill. But as we go through, 95% of them are the same. So, but I do encourage you to take notes. So what is e-commerce? What platforms are used around the world? How do you decide what products and markets? Some export basics to be concerned about. Marketing for international commerce, we'll touch on that briefly, and then some of the details, issues that you can run into when you're exporting if you're new to export, and then a couple case studies. So e-commerce worldwide has grown tremendously. And if you're looking, like this is looking at the greatest sales growth. And this will change over 5-year periods. So Mexico is growing a lot right now. India is growing a fair amount. Philippines, China has a huge, huge e-commerce market and business already. So we've really seen a lot of growth, and these figures are even before the pandemic. So I'm sure that the numbers are much, much higher now. So where do they expect to be the largest e-commerce markets? Indonesia, developing countries, basically. Indonesia, Mexico, Philippines, Colombia. A lot of these areas where income is uneven. And so people may be living in rural environments and yet they have a higher level of income and they don't have the ability to buy things in that environment. So buying things online is very useful to them. You'll notice on the bottom, whenever I'm using slides or images from someone else, I try to link or mention them so that you can find that information, or it'll be embedded in the graphic. What e-commerce platforms are used around the world? There's a variety. You would think Amazon is worldwide, but it's not the number one, in many of these other markets. Mercado Libre is very big in South America and into Central America. Naspers is in Russia. Alibaba and its offshoots are in China. eBay is bigger in Australia than Amazon is. And you see some other colored, areas here where they have very localized e-commerce providers. So one of your first questions to yourself is, what e-commerce platform is in the market that I'm interested in? And don't assume that it's going to be one that you're familiar with. You know, it may not be an Amazon or an eBay. So here's some examples of, you know, China, the biggest ones in China: Tmall, Alibaba, JD.com. In Brazil, you've got B&W, Netshoes, you know, Mercado Libre, completely different, right? In these two different markets, there's really no overlap of that. You can also use Facebook and WhatsApp and, you know, regular social media platforms to promote your sales on e-commerce. So, and some of them are developing embedded e-commerce solutions. WhatsApp is moving in that direction. Facebook is moving in that direction. So it's possible that you have the ability to use those and not use a 100% e-commerce platform. So down in the bottom left here, we have a graphic about, you know, your options are selling direct from your business or your website, using a marketplace like Amazon or Tmall, and then social media commerce, which is what I just talked about, like WhatsApp, Facebook. In China, that would be Wechat or Douyin. TikTok and Instagram are now in the US becoming very big e-commerce links for companies and ways for them to sell their product. So, you know, again, down in the bottom, you've got your own website, you've got an e-commerce platform, what they call a marketplace, and then you've got selling through social media e-commerce as three different channels, you know, that they're breaking up. So do you need a platform? Do you need to use one of these platforms, or can't you just use your own website? I would caution you that websites can be very differentiated by different markets. For one thing, you may have a country where they don't have a strong internet capability. And so people do everything on their phones, and websites may be very slow to load, or they may have trouble accessing certain websites through their mobile service provider. So in that situation, a localized e-commerce solution is going to be better. You also find countries where websites are just not commonly used for business. You know, in China, almost everything is on WeChat. So if we're setting up a presence for a client in China, we're not going to necessarily have a website. We're going to use a WeChat company page instead. And in Europe and some other countries, that might be WhatsApp instead of a website. So websites can be very helpful, and it's also in part depending on your product. If you have a very technical product that requires a lot of customer instruction and potentially support, or customers might be concerned because your product is expensive and they want to see a lot of background information, then having a website as a somewhere for the client to go, maybe not to buy your product, but to learn about your product and the company, might be very valuable in that particular market for your particular product. So this isn't a one size fits all, you know, situation by any means. And in the beginning, a lot of what you're going to be focused on is this kind of research into, based on your product and that country that you're interested in, what solutions are going to be optimal for you. What about Shopify? I have a slide here after this. Shopify will allow you to sell internationally, but Shopify is in some ways a shopping cart for your website. They're not a platform like Amazon and eBay are, where there's an embedded marketing system inside Shopify, where the customers can go there and your product pops up when they do a search, or even if they look for something else, you know, maybe, you know, you have an ad that pops up for them. So it's not the same solution as an e-commerce service provider. Shopify is not. It's more of a back office sales function on your website. So understand that it's different, right? It's different than having your products on Amazon or eBay or Etsy. So what benefits does a platform like Amazon or Mercado Libre provide? People already have those downloaded on their phones. You know, they go there, they're looking for product. They don't have to, it's much easier for them to find the companies like yours, where instead of having to go to, you know, read a link somewhere and go to a particular website where Shopify is embedded, So they make it a lot easier for the customer. They also have a lot of marketing tools, distribution tools, business tools for you to, to market and sell and find customers for your business. And Facebook, as I said, it depends on the markets, but Facebook is becoming a platform for sales, and definitely service sales. And as a link to other e-commerce platforms, it's already very powerful. In some markets and environments, Facebook Messenger is the most highly used communication tool over texting, over WhatsApp. Facebook Messenger is the way people communicate. And so people are already on Facebook, when they're there. So again, you have to do your research and identify where in your market or the market you're looking at, what platforms are going to be most successful for you. This is a screenshot from Shopify, and it talks about how they can help you grow internationally with Shopify. They have an international shipping strategy, what to charge customers, understanding country regulations, preparing packages, working with different shipment companies, pricing out. So they will help you. And we're going to look later at some of what Amazon has for their, for you to go international with Amazon. So we're going to look broadly today at Western Europe and China. Mostly, we're going to talk a little bit about some other options that are available in Brazil and some other markets. Western Europe in general, the internet is almost universal. And again, this is something you cannot take for granted. And many countries rely on mobile internet service over landlines or Wi-Fi, which also can influence what platform you use and how you sell your products. So in Western Europe, there's a very strong, built out internet system, as well as mobile phone system. Mobile payments are common, and the shipping and post is very efficient. So those are not issues, right? The top purchases in e-commerce in Western Europe are apparel, footwear, and food items, interestingly enough. The largest retailer is Amazon, followed by eBay. So again, Western Europe might be a good first step for you if you're already on Amazon here in the United States. Eastern Europe has more regional players. So there's more e-commerce platforms that are specific to one or two countries that are the largest in those countries. They also have more challenges in shipping and delivery, where there may be more time consuming, it may be more expensive, there may be more theft. You may have to contract with local delivery services, and then payment issues. Also, there's not the same mobile payment system in place in some of the Eastern Europe countries. So again, even within Europe, you can have very different markets in Poland as compared to in Spain. So sustainability and data protection are much bigger concerns in Europe than they tend to be in the United States. Sustainability meaning your product itself, your packaging, your return policy, all of that is going to be something people are going to be looking for information on and will factor into their purchasing decision. And then data protection. A lot of Europe has more robust data regulations than we do in the United States. And you need to be aware of those, especially if people are coming and accessing your website, or even if you're communicating with them and capturing any of that data. So, even within Western Europe, it can be a complex environment. So if we look at Amazon first, we'll look at it in Europe, but again, it can apply to other parts of the world. Amazon has a global selling platform to help you sell. You need to register a new account in different markets. Now, you don't have to. You could sell with your US Amazon account. It just won't get the same visibility in Europe as if you had a new account on Amazon Europe. So again, something to look at. Many services and processes are the same as the US, not all, but many of them. You are responsible for understanding the taxes in each country. Now, they will add those on and collect them, but you are responsible in the purchase system, but you are responsible for understanding that and being compliant to it. VAT, if you haven't heard of VAT, which is very common in many other countries, value-added tax would have to be charged. Even if you're shipping from the United States, whoever's importing that product into Europe with some minimum standards and personal use caveats is responsible for paying VAT when that product is imported. So understanding VAT would be important for you also. Product compliance is also your responsibility. We're going to talk about both of those things later in the presentation today. There are some requirements to use the local language, not only in labeling, but in packaging and other things. So you need to look at language requirements in the countries that you're looking at. There are Amazon fulfillment centers in Germany, Poland, and Czech Republic. So you would be, as you grow, able to use Fulfillment by Amazon in those markets. There is a Fulfillment by Amazon Export Program where you're keeping your inventory at one of the FBA locations here in the United States, but they can ship those products export also. And you don't need, a European specific Amazon store. So already just in this one slide, I think I've made it clear that it could take you hours of time to research and figure out, just using Amazon in Europe. And I encourage you to do that before you get very far. So why expand to Europe? This is, again, Amazon has a lot of resources you can use. They talk about, additional customers, diversifying your revenue, having Amazon handle the details. This is from their global selling website. So, and it's in English. You can go check this out and get some more information. They have the Fba Export Program here. They describe it for you. There's more, FAQs and information on this page that will help you understand if that's maybe your first step is using Facebook, fulfillment centers or Amazon's fulfillment centers and shipping from the US. So Europe. All right. So again, country by country, differentiation, languages may be important, specific taxes, regulatory issues. If you have an electronic product, clothing, food, children's toys, there's a lot of products that are more heavily regulated around the world than they are in the United States. So what about Mexico? Mexico is a growth market, but there's more challenges. The internet is not as available in Mexico. Landline Wi-Fi is not available. So most access is by mobile apps on phones. Delivery is often a problem. And then electronic payment is also not widely used. And there are some very creative workarounds for that, where that customer may prepay for a card that they can use, for payments. So there are solutions to that, but you would need to research and understand those. Big players are Amazon, Mercado Libre, and Walmart. So we have another one popping up in here. It is a big growth market, especially for larger companies. As I said, they can go to a convenience store and make payment on some of these e-commerce sites, or they can buy prepaid cards. Up to 30% of the consumers in Mexico don't have a bank account, and fewer have credit or debit cards. So, payment can be a real concern here that you need to research and take a look at. So Mercado Libre, how would you set up an account? We saw in our earlier map, it's very big in a lot of South America, as well as into Central America and Mexico. Similar to Amazon, there's 20 main categories. There's smaller categories. There's a list of products that they'll help you understand what's restricted into certain markets. So you can research that on Mercado Libre's website. To set up a seller account, it's not any more complicated than it is on Amazon or some of these other sites. You fill out a registration form, you provide your company's information, you'll receive a confirmation of account, and then you log in and start to set up your account. It doesn't have to be in Spanish or Brazilian Portuguese. But again, who is your market, and are the customers that you're trying to attain, are they going to be able to be fluent enough in English to read what you're doing, or use an app to translate things into Spanish or Brazilian Portuguese? So you want to think through and do a little bit more research on the language side of this. China. variety of e-commerce platforms. They're really, truly a leader in e-commerce worldwide, in large part because the majority of Chinese still don't have or don't use personal automotives all that often. So they rely on public transportation or their version of Uber, or Lyft. So it can be difficult to go shopping. You don't throw things in the back of your trunk and pull up into your driveway and unload in your garage, right? So it's difficult to buy things and carry them on public transportation. So it's much easier to have things delivered to your home. And if you go to apartment buildings in China, it's fascinating. They have systems just for receiving all the packages that are sent to the residents of that apartment building. So you've got all these varieties you've got the e-commerce sites like Tmall, Taobao, JD.com. You've got Suning is like our Best Buy. Dianping is similar to that. Gomei is another electronics company. So you've got companies that specialize, that have brick and mortar shops, and then they also have e-commerce platforms in particular types of product categories. So again, you want to, research and take a look at those. Differences, I'm going to go through this quickly because we got to stay on schedule here, but, Tmall, Taobao, JD.com, Pinduoduo, we talk about, this slide introduces a little bit what's different about each one of those. So WeChat, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of like Facebook on steroids. So you can post moments, they call them, of what's happening in your life, pictures of your family or holidays. You can use it to chat. I can live my life on WeChat in China. I can order a car. I can transfer money to my kids. I can pay my rent. I can order through e-commerce. It's integrated into just about everything. So this WeChat company page on the left is one we set up for a client of ours, KT Tape. And it talks about, that company, and there's links to order, ask questions. JD.com on the right, just to show you the scale of how big this is. Just JD.com had net revenue of over 20 billion US dollars. And this slide is probably 2019, 2020. So it's just a huge marketplace for a variety of reasons. We walk through quickly here how to establish an account on Taobao. You can set up as a foreign company, not in China. In some of these sites, you can set up a foreign presence e-commerce account, but it doesn't allow you to do everything that you need to do. So in general, you have to have a company in China registered as a corporation in China to set up the account for you. And there are service providers who will do this if you don't have your own company, and they charge a set of fees and then an ongoing percentage of sales. So they would be using their company name, bank account, personal ID. It's a very robust verification system. So if we look at Taobao here, screenshots from setup, you can see it's in English, right? So you can have your mobile phone number you can put in the US. You can create your Alipay account, which is like PayPal, and link that to Taobao. PayPal is not robust in China. And so Alipay or one of their local payment accounts would be better for you. The second screen, you set up your password. You get to the point where your account's set up now, you want to open up a shop. And then you have your login information. So you could do it, but again, you're going to be very limited. It's going to be very time consuming. You'll probably run into roadblocks. So it's better to have one of these services in China, set it up on either Taobao or Tmall is another one here. So here, opening your store on the top right, you can see again that it's in English. They do have Tmall Global specifically for overseas companies that want to export into China, higher fees, higher deposit requirements. You have to prove that the trademark is yours on Tmall. So Tmall is a bit easier to do this without using a service provider in China, but even then it's not what I would call easy. So you would have to be very committed. A lot of companies in the US sell on Amazon here in the US, and the products are purchased from China and shipped to China. That's a huge business and an opportunity also. So a lot of different e-commerce platforms and options for you to look at. What products should you export? I recommend generally high value per cube. So for example, I would not export this bottle of vitamin water because the cost of the bottle of vitamin water and the sales price in China compared to how large it is and what the cost of shipping is going to be, I'm unlikely to be competitive by the time it gets to China. So selling an electronic good, something that's more high value for a relatively small size, something that, you know, isn't easy for them to get in that market, or where American products have a better reputation. Honey products, although many of our grocery honey products come from China, but small batch, farm to table, you know, honey products are big in China. US vitamins are big in China. So things like that, you know, you would want to look at, and any country and situation. What products can be used in multiple environments? You know, dishes, clothes, automotive parts to some extent, if those vehicles are in use in that country. You would recognize that an electronic product may have a different plug style in a different market. It may have a different current. You know, the Europe and the US are different, China and the US are different. So you'd have to modify your products for that. Clothes, I said that in the Chinese English. Clothes are sized differently in different markets. We tend to be an American large as a European extra large, as a Chinese triple extra large. You know, so how are your clothes sized? How regulated or environment specific are your products? You know, again, in China and in Europe, and where there's typically much smaller residences than we have in the US, where we have fewer people and a lot of land, you would have a smaller refrigerator. Size might be more of an issue on a coffee maker. Are there regulations for a coffee maker in that market? CE regulations in Europe and CCC regulations in China for those types of products. So those are things you want to consider. Have you received, in terms of where to kind of point your radar, have you received inquiries from overseas? Have you had on Amazon, if you had a lot of sales in a particular market that show you that that market may be a good one for you, and your next step then is to do Amazon in that market or whatever other e-commerce platform works over there? Are your customers sending to international markets, or are distributors or traders buying from you and then turning around and selling your product export to other markets? That's another opportunity that you may have. On the industrial component size, you may have customers that are buying things from you and shipping to their factories or businesses overseas. So look around you and see what's happening already. Where are you getting interest from? Where are your products going? Where may be, you know, a market for you? Market price. How do you set your market price? Back to basics. You start with what your cost of your product is, and then you have to look at the shipping. How much will the shipping and the import duties and fees and VAT, how much will that add to the price, either that you're paying in some instances, or where the customer is paying, but they're still going to factor into their purchase decision? Is your product considered a commodity or a premium product? And again, in the US, your product may be considered a commodity, but in another market, it may be considered a premium product, and vice versa. So, you know, where are you? How price sensitive is your customer likely to be? You can always lower your price, but it's difficult to raise it later. So make sure you have a long-term price strategy rather than a short-term strategy. I'm been named as a advisor for New Zealand companies, and I've been helping a lot of New Zealand companies over the last few months coming into the US. So, you know, pricing is something that we're always talking about. Where do they start pricing in the market? What channels are they looking at? Are they going to sell through Amazon? Are they going to have their own warehouse? Or if they have their own warehouse here, do they have to start paying sales tax? So these are issues that companies coming into the US have, just in the same way that you do, you know, when you're exporting to these other markets. As I said, if you received any inquiries from overseas, are your customers sending them overseas? What do you see at international trade shows? You know, there are oftentimes trade shows, and in the last year and a half, 2 years, those have gone online. So if you go to these trade show websites in the past, you can often see a list of who were the exhibitors at that trade show, who were the speakers, and that'll tell you what's going on in that market, what other companies are there, who's interested in it, what can be used in multiple markets. We talked about that. And can you expand your capabilities, or do you have staff who can manage it? That's a kind of throw that in on this slide, but that's a big point. You're going to be adding more time and energy and overhead costs to managing this export business. Do you have the staff to do that? Do you have the capability to do that? And if not, how do you grow that capability? And that's where I'll put a plug in here for your SBDC offices. That's where they can add, you know, a lot of value, and they have programs like this that can really help you if you don't have those capabilities. So you want to test the product. You could do a one-time sale to gauge customer response on Amazon. You could hire a market research company, again, US government, you know, US commercial services and various offices have information that your tax dollars have paid for, and I encourage you to make use of that. Test ship products to a brick and mortar retailer in that country to confirm import requirements and costs. So if you happen to get an inquiry from a store in Rio de Janeiro and they say, we want to buy 20 pieces of your product, then that's your learning curve test case, right? Selling them those 20 pieces and seeing what costs and how much it costs you to ship and what requirements there are. So start small and scale up, right? So you can adjust your product offering if you need to. What you think may be a good seller may not be for reasons that you can't understand. I had an environmental health and safety consultant working with one of the New Zealand companies recently, and they were focused on in manufacturing, selling a safety product, but it relied on the people in the plant wearing safety vests that had tape on them, reflective tape. And she told them the culture in the US is in those factories, we don't wear those vests. Those are what visitors wear. So we can tell the visitors apart from the regular employees. And that's not something that everybody would know, you know. So it's important to really use as many resources as you can to gather market information about that country, its culture, the potential consumers. How would they be using your product? If you're selling them honey, you know, do they put it into tea? Do they put it over toast? Do they take a spoon and have it as a health tonic? You know, how is it used? Does it use it cooking? So you really want to open your mind to how different people might use your product in different markets. How to advertise, engage social media. And why do I say that? E-commerce is an online platform. Social media is an online communication tool. So they're intrinsically linked with each other. And the customer that's online enough to purchase from you e-commerce is also online enough to be looking at your social media presence. So do you need a website? Should it be hosted from the US or a local country? I've spoken together with, and I know different SBDC offices pair with one of the larger international website companies, IBT. So they can help you localize and host your website in other markets. But again, in some markets, that's going to be absolutely necessary based on the consumer's expectations. And in other markets, it's not going to be as helpful to you. So it depends on market to market. What is the customer's path to purchase? So do they typically look at what are the top sellers? Do they look at who are social media influencers talking about? Are they looking at technical specifications for your product? Online reviews? Do they go to a local retailer, but then they buy online? So what is their mindset when they're looking to make a purchase in that category? And you want to understand that to understand how you develop your channel and how you advertise. So you want an advertising campaign based on your product and how it should be exposed to that market after you've gathered all this information. Too many companies have a build it and they will come mentality. Our product's so awesome that all we have to do is create this website or put our products on Amazon and Mercado Libre and everybody's going to come running to them. And if only that were true, right? So you really have to think about, how do customers find me? And you can't just rely on the search engine and the search functions. And then translation, translate and localize not only the words, but the images and the references. If you're talking about some famous TV show that may only be famous in the US, if you're using an image where someone's, pointing in the US, that may mean I'm being aspirational. But in another market, it may appear to be hostile. So you want to make sure that the language, and Spanish is different in many different countries. There's different Chinese in Taiwan from People's Republic of China, from Singapore. So you really need to be very aware of localizing your images and your language. So I'm going to go through this quickly because we're running out of time. So we talked about this, websites, hosting a website in China has to be registered by a Chinese company. You can't do it from the US. So how do you get into that? So different markets, social media platforms, Europe, WhatsApp, Facebook and Twitter, China, WeChat, QQ, Douyin and Toutiao. Brazil, South America, Orkut, Blogger, and Taringa, and India, Hike and Flick. So really different platforms in different countries and markets. So again, you need to put aside your expectations and really do some research on where things are used and when. So this is 2020, the world's most used social media platforms. Facebook, YouTube, interestingly enough, if you categorize that as a social media platform, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger separately from Facebook, and then you have WeChat, Instagram, and on down. So let's talk here about export. What requirements are they for your country? Labeling. Your HST or HS code is the code that describes your product that's used on all the documents when your product crosses through customs, import, or export. So one of the big things you need to do is identify what is the HS code for your product. Regulatory means like FDA. If I'm selling vitamins into that market, maybe in the US, it doesn't require FDA testing, but in that market, it might. What about warranties? What kind of warranty are you going to give your product, and how are you going to service that product by warranty? Will the customer ship it back? Is that prohibitive? Can they ship it back, into the US? Because then you get into US customs issues and regulatory issues potentially. What about health and safety concerns? Do they have a higher standard for a certain type of chemical and paint than we do in the US? So those are all things you need to research and wrap your head around for your product. How will you ship it to each customer? Are you going to use a 3PL where you ship a container into, or half a container or pallet into that country, and then it's distributed from there? Again, look at your customs duties and taxes, your VAT. How will you handle warranty? HS codes, I'm going to leave this to you to read in the slide, and there's a link here for you how you can search HS codes. Your exterior carton markings are very important. You want to have the shipper's mark. Country of origin is a whole nother issue on export. Weight marking in pounds and kilos, numbers of packages, the size of cases within your external markings, handling marks, cautionary marks, this side up, the port of entry, labeling any hazardous materials, ingredients may be necessary to have on the exterior carton when you're shipping overseas. So again, this is a whole section of commerce that there are people in this world that do nothing but focus on this. So it can be very complicated. Payment terms. You want to get familiar with Incoterms. This is a great slide on, different Incoterms on the top, and, who's then responsible for these, for either the payment or the packaging or charges. So you can go through here and look at this. I highly recommend that you have someone very knowledgeable review your invoices and your packing list and your shipping documents when you start exporting, to make sure that it's extremely clear when the liability passes from you to whoever's buying the goods, who's paying for what, who's managing what part of the process to ship it, because it may be, you know, FedEx to the port, and then a shipping company by ship from here to Europe, and then a truck would pick it up, and maybe a plane. So who's managing all that? Who's responsible for those costs? Who owns it in case the ship sinks or the truck gets into an accident? Who's covering insurance on it? At what point do they pay you? Those are all things that need to be called out in your document. Here's another screen grab in Indonesia, you know, on how to calculate import costs into Indonesia. So again, there's a lot of great information available online. You just need to know to ask the questions, right? Example product certification. I talked about CE for Europe and CCC for China, FDA. Other products in some markets have specific regulatory bodies, fire protection equipment, any kind of cabling or Wi-Fi, nuclear equipment, even valves that go into nuclear sites, you know, may have specific requirements. So you need to take a look that up. Customer support and warranty. Does your product require you to provide instructions to the customer? If they need to understand, I got one of these little touch lights yesterday, and you know, how do I turn it on and off? And how do I charge it? How do I replace the battery? So are you going to do that online? Is there going to be written documents in the box? Are they going to be in a local language? Is there going to be a phone number to call? Do you normally provide warranty or repair service? Can you do that overseas, or no, you'll sell it without? What is the customer's expectation? So you may be, you know, familiar with in the United States that this product is typically sold as is, right? But in the other market, there may be an expectation for warranty that is not common in the United States, and customers may, even though you have a warning on your e-commerce platform, they may, after they've bought the product, expect you to provide customer support or warranty service for it. Can you designate a local partner in that market to handle that for you? So again, you want to look at this. We're going to go through a couple cases here. So we're not completely done. You're not done yet, but final thoughts. The devil is in the details. I can't tell you how many times I have somebody send me through one of the SBDC offices in Florida. They sent me a document and said, the company is telling us that we have to pay before it leaves the factory. And you look at their documents, and it says, and that it doesn't have a Incoterms, you know, 3-character symbol. It says at shipment. Well, where does at shipment start? Does at shipment start when it leaves the factory, because it's being shipped out of the factory? Does at shipment start after it's trucked to the port? Does it start once it's on the boat? So the supplier was in China was saying, you have to pay us before it leaves the factory, because that's at shipment. And the American customer thought at shipment meant when it got to the port. So how do you reconcile those details? So over explain things, make it very clear in your documents what you're expecting. How do you get your product to the customer? Don't assume that, you can use Amazon's fulfillment, or you can use some of these, Alibaba in China has a fulfillment service. But what does that imply for you? Does that mean that, what if there's a problem and the shipment doesn't get to the customer? Who's responsible to pay for that? Who follows up on it? Who gets refunded if it's not there? So you want to, dig into all of those. How do you get paid? I didn't spend a lot of time on that this afternoon, but you may not, in some e-commerce sites, you link your bank account, they collect the money, they pay you. In others, you have to link to an outside payment provider. If you're selling off your website, you're definitely collecting it. Is that common in their country? And some countries control foreign exchange. So would they have access to US dollars to even pay you if they needed to? What does that government require from you? What kind of documents need to be in the box? What kind of product information? What kind of labeling? What regulatory expectations does that government have for the products that you're selling? Foreign exchange risk. So you may have it on your website or listed on Amazon in US dollars, And when you sell it, by the time they receive the money, the foreign exchange has changed. And so instead of getting $5.50, you get $5. And over the course of a lot of products, that can start to really add up. Your e-commerce provider, there's a lot of paperwork and implied agreements that are part of your clicking accept, accept, accept. Make sure you read those and understand what that means, right? And we said next week is social media marketing. So let me go through a couple case studies here. So this is the footwear brand Rothy's. I'm not sure how they pronounce it in the UK, but they sell online, and they recently announced they made 140 million of revenue in 2018. And that was very rapid growth with a team of 5 based in Shanghai. So they used WeChat as their door to China. They launched a WeChat store and started selling on Tmall in about 6 months. They have, there's called mini programs in WeChat, when we'll talk about more social media stuff next week. They have a coupon system. It allows customers in the mini program, while they're still in the social media site, to personalize footwear, share and gift items to their friends. They can set up offline appointments to meet somewhere to try on shoes. So it's a very robust customer system. So different service provider to help them create this program in China. They have live in-person events, direct to Chinese consumer, launch parties, so they've gotten a lot of their growth out of using social media combined with bricks and mortar business, combined with e-commerce. So they've leveraged all of that together. How do they drive traffic to their mini programs? They've got coupons on their official account. If you follow them, you'll get additional discounts. If you share information about them, you can get a coupon or additional discounts. So there's a variety of ways that they can capture that customer. Here's an example of what a mini program looks like, and you can customize your shoes this way. It also leverages social media in the sense that once you've customized your shoes, you can go on and show them, and your people in your social media network will see those, or people that track Rothy's will see those. They'll see your customized shoes and they'll get ideas, and they'll say, wow, this is really cool. We could do something like that ourselves, So really a great way of using all aspects of websites, brick and mortar, e-commerce, and social media, in this case, WeChat, together, to drive sales, and tremendous sales growth because of that. Now, I'm sure it was quite a large investment also, but tremendous sales growth. Here's another US company, Gemstone King. So they started in Israel, relocated to the US, selling gemstones, mostly diamonds. And some people, myself included, might say, buying diamonds online? But they really focus their executives on international sales, and they're on multiple e-commerce platforms: Amazon, Newegg, Rakuten, Sears, Tmall, a variety of platforms around the world. They grew their sales internationally, but what they found difficult was understanding what demand was going to be in these different markets and being able to maintain inventory for that. And then if you're on multiple platforms and each platform says, I've got 10 pieces or 20 pieces and 30 pieces here and 60 pieces there, how many pieces do you have? Do you have 50 pieces in total, and you put 100 available on different platforms, figuring that, people want to see that there's enough available in different markets, but then if they sell out, maybe you've oversold. So how do you manage inventory? Turned out to be a big issue for them. So they found a service provider that had created a database management tool that worked across these different platforms. So again, as much as e-commerce has grown and as many different platforms as there are worldwide, as well as payment services and shipping opportunities, there have also been a tremendous growth in startup companies with really creative ways to solve the problems of these companies that are selling e-commerce. So, you know, you're unlikely to be the first person who's struggling with whatever it is you're struggling with. And so going to your resources and asking for referrals, or looking online to find companies that can help you break through whatever roadblock it is that you're at, to translate it into another language, to review the images that you're using, to understand the labeling requirements, to partner with a local company in that market for customer service. There's a lot of resources available around this. So they should not be roadblocks that stop you from going forward in this e-commerce environment. But at the same time, they need to be cautionary that make you pause and stop and say, I need to spend a little bit more time or resources or whatever to take a look at this. So here is one of Gemstone's sites, and they talk about, this is a Facebook page, they have an Instagram page, they have a LinkedIn profile, they're on Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube, and those are very heavy US, forget what they're doing internationally. So they're definitely on social media. They have it embedded. It seems seamless to the customer that they click through to this and they're able to make purchases. I don't know how many of you have made purchases on Facebook or Instagram, you know, but it is a very strong avenue for finding customers as they're scrolling through whatever articles or you know, influencers they follow, or, you know, famous TV shows or movie stars or whatever it is that they're on social media looking at. These accounts are going to pop up. And again, there's advertising options. We'll talk more about that stuff next week. So, you know, there's really, these are very, I would say, larger companies that have invested quite a lot into their international expansion. But you can do international expansion without investing quite that much money. So, but again, you want to be very focused and targeted on which market, which platform, what kind of issues am I going to have, what products are going to be the right products for me to start with. And so walking down that path will help you make the best decision. Here's some contact information for me. And I know we're going to leave a little time here for Q&A. So, Bill?
Wow. Well done, Kim. So it's a pleasure to have somebody who's such an expert, and we really appreciated that. I've just got one question, just about the. No, I'm going to leave it. We'll wait. There's one question. Let me go to that. Just an acknowledgement. Excellent job. So you know what? That's what we've got, Kim. Good enough. That was fantastic. There's a lot of information there. There's Kim's contact information for following up, and we'll follow. We've got a couple final slides that I can do, and everybody, if you're interested, we can continue on this next week.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone.
All right, Kim, I'll finish here, and we'll see you next week. Hi, everyone. Thanks for hanging with us here. I'm going to quickly tell you about what else we're doing at the International Trade Center. For your information, we're your resource. So about e-commerce, about shipping, about compliance, about getting paid, about finding distribution. And this is how we do it, right? We're your resource. Feel free to reach out to talk to me, to set up a time to talk. We'll talk about your strategy. We'll talk about your export plan. We've got access to some market research that we can do based on those HS codes that Kim referred to, and try to identify your top 3 to 5 markets. We'll talk about what does that channel look like. Is it an e-commerce play? Is it an e-commerce and on the ground distribution? Is it both? Who do we want to access? What does the customer look like? And we'll just walk through your business. We'll work with state and federal agencies to find a pool of partners in those target countries. And then we'll go work through the process to select the channel and select the partners and negotiate with those people to get your business up and running. And that's what I spent my career doing. So that's where we can guide you through that part of it. At some point, you start exporting. And remember, at the International Trade Center, you've got a network of experts standing behind you that are available. And so you do want to create that international team, and we can help you find those people. The Illinois Department of Commerce is there to assist. We work with them. They've got a global presence. They've got headquarters in Chicago and 6 offices in key markets around the world. We reach out to our colleagues at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity to help us. So they would be somebody, for example, I'm working with the office in Tokyo, Japan right now with 2 different clients. And the office in Japan is very qualified, and they're looking for distribution partners based on the profile we gave them. So that's the type of thing we can help you with. There are grants available. It's called the ISTEP grant, and it can be used, that money can be used on trade missions or on foreign market sales missions. Now they're virtual, but next year they will be coming back probably, right? And those funds can be applied to that. Funds can be applied to website localization, which could help you with e-commerce, can help you with product certification to get, for example, the CE in another country. So funds are available. So what are the requirements? In general, here's the requirements. You're a year in business, fewer than 500 employees, $250,000 in annual revenue, understand a bit about exporting. And of course, we're going to coach you to become eligible. And there are certain standards in terms of product and services and content. Okay. Now, this is not necessarily ironclad, but these are the guidelines. Okay. And beyond this, we next week, stay tuned. We'll send you an invite for next week's International E-commerce and Social Media webinar. In June, we've got 2, one on what the XM Bank can do for you. Basically, that's going to be a deep dive into credit insurance. So you've got 10 or 20 accounts overseas. How can you be sure you're going to get paid? Credit insurance is a great tool to do that. Then we'll talk with UPS about what do they do? What can they do in terms of some of the topics that Kim talked about? Can they help you with the documentation, et cetera? And then finally, international due diligence is going to be a fantastic expert that's going to speak to us about, okay, I've got an international partners that I'm thinking of working with. How do I do due diligence? So that's all we have for today. If you'd like to reach out to me, there's my email and phone number. Set an appointment. And I think it's been a great program today. Thanks for attending, and we'll send out the slides and all the contact information, the link for next week, the link for an appointment if needed, and go from there. All right, everybody. Thanks, and have a good rest of your day.